and Mitchell Silva. Now, Allan has been playing this Gardevoir deck throughout the entirety of this season so far. Earlier in San Antonio, finished top 32. Mitchell has also been playing a wider variety of decks, but as of recent, also finding comfort in this Giratina V-Star deck.
Yeah, both of these players looking to make a push for their first Masters top 8 in the modern era, at least. I know we got a little fun factoid from Jeremy backstage here. Mitchell Silva is a player who's been around for some time, actually got top 16 at the World Championships in 2011, where he lost to our own Jeremy Jallin in that single elimination. Back then, we cut to top 32 at the World Championships. So Mitchell took the loss to Jeremy. Jeremy made his top 8 at Worlds, which he is always happy to remind us of.
Looking at the prize cards here, does have a Water Energy prize, and Mitchell's only playing 2 copies of that Water Energy.
That's a big deal.
And that would be a big deal with Allan prizing that mana fee.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, normally not as big of a factor. Greninja, it's kind of just something that you have in there as an option. The couple of Water Energies, you're not super committed to it, but if the pieces fall right and your opponent doesn't have a mana fee in play, you go for it. Doesn't really come up too often in this matchup because the Gardevoir players are really aiming to put down that mana fee. But yeah, like you mentioned, Allan did prize that. We'll see how things shape up, and it is going to be Allan going first.
And the dynamic of this matchup immediately changing with the Zacian start. Chip, how does this change how this matchup maybe typically goes by starting Zacian V?
Yeah, normally you want to lean on your single prize Pokemon in the early game as the Gardevoir player, you know, using things like the Screamtail, using Cresselia if you play it. Allan is choosing not to play the Cresselia for this weekend. But Zacian is not the worst starter. It's not ideal. You can get an energy attachment to it right away and try to start swinging on turn 2 with the Storm Slash. You can get that extra energy acceleration as well thanks to the ability. So that's probably what we'll see Allan go for. A little annoying to start. It does have to retreat, and that also does mean Allan is pretty unlikely to be able to pull off a turn 2 Mirage Step.
Of course, you do have that advantage of ending your turn with Roar of the Sword to accelerate a Psychic Energy on. As Allan will play Battle VIP Pass, an excellent setup card on this first turn. Just checking through the deck, we'll get the unfortunate news that Manaphy is in the prize cards, and it will just be 2 Ralts put into play on the bench, potentially going back in with another searching card. At minimum, that Roar of the Sword to end this turn off. Yeah,
and Allan can still technically get the turn 2 Mirage Step. You know, with this Roar of the Sword, it will attach an energy, I assume, to the Zacian V, and then you can retreat it into a benched Kirlia, evolve that, into a benched Ralts, evolve it into the Mirage Step Kirlia, and get yourself a couple of your Refinement Kirlias into play on the next turn. So plenty of options. I wouldn't be surprised to start to see the Zacian start swinging next turn, especially depending on what Mitchell does on the other end of the table.
And that will be the question. Do we see Cramorant get aggressive? Do we see Giratina start to Abyss Seek? It's all going to come down to the pieces available here in Mitchell's hand. And that is a great piece to start the turn off with. Colress's Experiment. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose 3 into your hand, and Lost Zone 2 immediately finds Colress for the following turn.
Yeah, really the bread and butter of this deck is Colress's Experiment. You want to play it every single turn in the early game if you can, and then in the end game, lean on other supporters like Roxanne and Boss's Orders. Colress gets you through your deck, finds you the key pieces to get yourself set up, and it also, of course, fuels that Lost Zone so that you can power up your attackers like the Cramorant. You can get to 10 to eventually attack with Sableye, or use that Star Requiem V-Star power on the Giratina V-Star, and then, of course, get to that ever-powerful Mirage Gate item card.
Will be the Nest Ball played next. The sequencing, very important in this deck, but
yes.
Maybe just as more than enough with the basic Pokemon in hand, and choosing to just play this Nest Ball before using Flower Selecting. Going to check through the deck himself, make sure all those energy cards pieces are available. We'll get the news that that Water Energy will not allow Moonlight Shuriken to be an attack choice, and now it comes down to how Mitchell wants to play this. Do we see something like Radiant Greninja come down? Do we see something like Cramorant try and put aggression onto the Zacian? This is where the trees of the branches start to really divide out.
Yeah, Mitchell actually already has a ton of Pokemon in the hand. I think I saw a Comfey, a Cramorant, and a Giratina V, so plenty of options already. This is shaping up to be pretty powerful for Mitchell. The big question is going to be how many switch cards are available. Can you pivot between these Comfeys and do enough in order to get into that Cramorant to attack? And hitting into this Zacian V would not be too bad. 110 damage, sets it up to be 2-hit knocked out by a Cramorant, or picked off later by a Sableye, potentially. And it also makes it a little harder for Allan to actually utilize it as an attacker. Of course, Psychic Embrace from Gardevoir, really powerful, gets you a ton of energy cards onto your Pokemon, but it also places damage counters on that Pokemon. So by putting 110 damage on this Zacian now, Mitchel can almost ensure that it is not a threat to one-hit KO a Giratina V-Star later.
Will be the Greninja grabbed off the nest ball and concealed cards. Draw some additional cards as here we go. Flower selecting to start things off, and pretty easy choice there. Spiritomb.
Yeah, not very good in this matchup. A tech for the Mew matchup mostly. It's also pretty good against things like Snorlax or Charizard, decks that are just really reliant on utilizing Rotom in the early game.
Another tougher choice. Now, these Comfeys are prone to being knocked out via something like Moonglow Reverse. We are just going to see a Comfey hit the Lost Zone. And there it is, that Cramorant and Giratina coming down.
Honestly, this is shaping up to be almost a perfect turn for Mitchel. Only one Giratina V into play, but that's really all you need in this matchup. Gardevoir's not going to put on a ton of pressure to that benched Giratina V, and yeah, using that Cramorant to throw some damage out makes it so Allan is probably not going to want to attack with this Zacian this turn. Just be a pretty easy two-prize swing for Mitchel. Let's see what Allan can piece together. Are the cards available to get the Mirage Step up and running?
We are just going to see Curlia get evolved right away.
I think I do see the Mirage Step in the hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have 3 Ralts. Oh, actually not putting the Mirage Step in play. What's going on with this?
I think I like this play from Allan. Just get aggressive, target down this Cramorant, and then if Mitchel wants to knock this Zacian out next turn, we'll need to either have a super solid turn of finding Mirage Gate and a whole bunch of pieces, or has to burn a Super Rod to bring this Cramorant back, which is a resource you might want to keep around for later. It all comes down to this hand, though. What did Allan draw into? Still has access to Refinement. Did find his Psychic Energy, so with an Ultra Ball in hand, too, both options are on the table here still, but that Ultra Ball will be discarded with Refinement. Does find another Psychic Energy.
Yeah, only one Curlia put into play. Allan maybe wishing that the other Mirage Step had been put into play. Even if you're not going to actually use the Mirage Step, can be nice to at least, you know, get yourself closer to a Gardevoir in a future turn.
Does find that rare candy, though, so can accelerate the evolution process, go into this Gardevoir EX. I think he'd rather just at least have that in play. This does, again, open up a Moonlight Shuriken to be an excellent attack. We know that's unavailable for Mitchel, but Allan may be sweating a little bit there, saying, listen, if you've got it, you've got it. Storm Slash. Allan, actually, this matchup, very untypical usually for how this game plays out, is the aggressor taking the first prize card.
Yeah, not what we see too often, but Allan having to capitalize on the fact that that Zacian V was the starter. Now Mitchel had that excellent hand, but it was put to the bottom of the deck last turn by Allan, so he's going to be trying to piece things together. Can he find a Colress's Experiment? One we know is on the bottom of the deck. Let's see if he can find one of the other 2 remaining right now. Do you see a Pokegear?
And there was a Super Rod drawn off of that Radiant Greninja. So, at worst, does have the guaranteed knockout onto the Zacian. We see Nest Ball, Switch Cart, and this Super Rod. And we're actually going to see the Super Rod played first. And this does put more cards into the deck that are not Colress, but it also shuffles. So how do you feel about this here,
I
Chip?
think this is absolutely correct because it's putting 2 cards back into the deck effectively, right? That Cramorant is going back in, but Mitchel has the Nest Ball to grab it right back out. So 2 cards going back into the deck, but you're increasing your odds to find a Colress just because you know for sure one is on the bottom of the deck. So now there's 3 Colress mixed around into, you know, the 30 or so card deck that Mitchel has remaining. He'll have a pretty decent shot, I think, here to find one off of Pokegear 3.0.
Mitchel set up to respond excellently here on turn number 2. Another question is, do you play this Jet Energy first? I feel like the only thing you really want is Colress, so I like this here. Flower selecting, look through some more cards. Do we see Colress's Experiment? And another tough choice there, Chip.
Yeah, was it that Super Rod and a Basic Energy? I believe, or Mirage Gate and a Basic Energy, yeah. Mirage Gate, really one of the most powerful cards in this entire deck. It's really what unlocks all your different strategies, gives you more mobility on the board to retreat, and also getting your energies onto your Giratinas. But has to choose to hang on to that. Does he find a Colress?
It is that full art Colress, that trainer gallery coming to the top of the deck in those 7 cards. Place into the hand, and we will see that get played this turn, and this will bump Mitchel up to 8 cards in the Lost Zone, so threatening a lot on the following turn. Everything from Star Requiem to Lost Mine will be at Mitchel's disposal if he can use some more of those flower selecting abilities coming up.
I think the only thing Mitchel would like to still see here that he doesn't have yet is a Path to the Peak, and did he find one? I don't see it.
It's not in those top 5 cards.
And Mitchell is playing 4 copies of the card, and I think when you're playing against Gardevoir, I mean, the Stadium War is pretty important here. The Path to Peak is a big deal to try to slow down the rule box ability of the Gardevoir EX. And so even though Allan likely plays plenty of Stadium outs, Mitchell just wants to throw those paths into play as early as possible. He plays 4 copies of them so that it's as difficult as possible for Allan to find that response.
Does have that Giratina V-Star, so make it a little bit harder for Allan to knock that out down the line. And now I think the only question here left for Mitchell is, do you hard retreat this Comfey, or do you preserve the energy on it and play something like the Switch card to pivot out?
Yeah, I think I can understand the reasoning for both. Whenever your opponent is playing something like Screamtail, though, I probably would lean towards just retreating the jet energy off. You know, if you use the Switch card, then that becomes an easy target for your opponent to go for with something like a Screamtail this turn, and then you didn't really get value out of that retreat. You burned a Switch for nothing effectively. We'll see what he decides to do.
And it will be preparing this Giratina V-Star early to wreak havoc over on Allan's board, getting that Psychic and Grass energy attached. With those 8 cards in the Lost Zone, the requirement is fulfilled for Mirage Gate to work its magic. Just that final choice, and we will see an excellent response here from Mitchell. Cramorant getting in there, spit innocently, responding, taking the Zacian out. By Allan not using Mirage Step early, you can sort of see his board is slightly suffering.
Yep.
He can draw maximum 6 cards next turn if he evolves everything up, maybe 2 more with Radiant Greninja, but
Yep.
these Pokemon are just slowly going to start to fall, especially when you don't have things like Manaphy or Jirachi down. You've got to be careful with what attackers you're using.
Yeah, you got to really manage your board pretty carefully in this matchup. With 3 bench spaces, however, Allan does have space for the Jirachi, has space for the Screamtail, and would have space for the Manaphy. We, of course, know that it is prized. But yeah, I feel like the Screamtail is a pretty decent option this turn. I mean, you are the Gardevoir aficionado of the 2 of us here, Ethan. What would you like to see Allan go with as an attacker at this turn?
It's okay to use Screamtail. I don't think it's a bad choice. But once you reach the end game, Screamtail starts to lose more of its value once the prize trade continues to shift. I think this would probably be the final turn to really use Screamtail, because after that, your opponent's going to start just getting guaranteed prize cards on your Pokemon with Lost Impact, Star Requiem. And by leaving it up there, your opponent has a free prize on it with Cramorant. I think if Allan can find something like Reversal Energy to attack with something like Gardevoir, this would be an excellent swing of a turn, and there it is. Yeah, I think this is a great line from Allan here.
Yeah, and did actually find the Manaphy off the prize card, so that is an excellent card to have grabbed. Now, the only other question is going to be, does Allan find the out to Jirachi? And I don't think he has it just yet.
Yeah, it's really tough, because as much as you want Jirachi down in this spot, you also are in a pretty bad spot if you
your board is kind of clunky.
Gardevoir gets knocked out by something like even Lost Impact or Shred the following turn.
You're basically forced to play Rare Candy Gardevoir EX the next turn. Well, I don't know. I mean, you could also try to load some extra energy into play to play around that, right?
Yeah.
You know, put even just 1 extra Psychic Energy on this Gardevoir, then you attach 1 the next turn, you know, play your own counter catcher. There's still plays available. You don't necessarily have to get a Gardevoir EX into play next turn if the one on your bench goes down.
Interesting choice. Allan actually found his Psychic Energy off of that Shining Arcana, but just chose to not attach it, chose to keep it in the hand, and this maybe is valuing having some sort of a response next turn by using concealed cards or having those out. So interesting choice. That 20 damage, as of right now, not super relevant, and a smart choice there, going to retreat first and then evolve into the Kirlia. Does have a slightly bigger retreat cost and can just sort of draw some more cards, and we'll have to see what this last bench space is allocated for.
It did find Ultra Ball, so Jirachi could be an option, but like we've talked about, it can be difficult to commit that extra Pokemon in play. Does have the Ralts in the hand and is debating benching it.
Yeah, this is why putting the 2 damage on the Kirlia just kind of makes things a little bit more awkward, because you're that much closer to potentially doing what Sableye is best at doing, is taking 2 prizes in 1 turn because you're loading all of this damage up. But the math plays around 10 damage off for taking that double knockout, so it will just be the knockout on Cramorant. That Moonlit Hill is a card that actually Allan is only playing 1 copy of, and it's sitting at the top of the prize cards.
Yeah.
Not only is it a great path counter, but of course it has that effect to heal Pokemon.
We saw in Cyrus's game yesterday just how excellent the Moonlit Hill can be when playing against a Lost Zone deck, and Allan doesn't have that tool available at this point in the game.
So we will see another Mirage Gate get played. There is 4 energy looks like left in the deck. So the choice here, how do you commit your energies? We could see something like the Water Energy come down. At this point with Manaphy in play, it's pretty unlikely that Radiant Greninja is really going to get in there and get a lot of value. It can. There are lines that allow it to happen, but it will just be the Grasp and Psychic Energy coming down. Could see this on the Giratina V, and this is honestly a great play where Shred has a lot of value in this position.
Yeah, Shred is not too bad against Gardevoir. Of course, it deals 160 damage. Gardevoir has 140 HP, so it takes it out. And otherwise, your only real ways to deal with a clean Gardevoir that has no damage counters on it would be to use your V-Star power, Star Requiem, or Lost Impact and Lost Zone 2 energies, and both of those options are extremely costly. By going in with a Giratina V, it has a little bit less HP. It does get KO'd a little bit easier on Allan's end, but you have the options to recover those cards later with a Super Eye.
This is really tough. Mitchel decided to keep Roxanne over the energy, which would guarantee the knockout onto that Gardevoir in the active spot because Mitchell had already lost zoned a Roxanne earlier on.
Yeah.
And got maybe a little bit greedy here, thinking that there were plenty of outs off of this flower selecting. And the way things are looking, I think the only way Mitchell can attack this turn would be to use that Star Requiem V-Star power, which is a huge investment into just a 140 HP Pokemon. Oh,
yeah.
there is. Oh, hold on.
Has Boss's Orders in hand and has not played a supporter. So, you know, we definitely could see the Boss's Orders target down this Gardevoir. And sure enough, bring that up here. We're going to see 2 prizes going to Mitchell. And I do believe Path to the Peak was held onto as well. Now, in this spot, well, Mitchell is going to put it in play. I was going to say there could be an argument to hold on to the Path. You've got Roxanne in your hand, so you can go for that powerful combo next turn. I don't hate this either, though. Put the Path into play right now. Even if Allan finds a response, then hopefully off of your Roxanne plus your flower selectings in a future turn, you'll be able to still set up that powerful play and try to slow Allan down.
So Mitchell now down to just 2 prize cards left. How does Allan respond in this spot? Now, Psychic Embrace is offline for the moment. Now there is that Curlia that can still evolve into Gardevoir EX. Did see one just go down. This level ball is played, and this will start to draw some more cards. So now we've got multiple draws on board. The Radiant Greninja currently offline, but the Gardevoir, the Curlias, these can all draw cards to the deck, build up potentially a big swing turn for Allan. I've really got my eye on that Giratina V on the bench, though. Is there a potential for Allan to find maybe another reversal energy and put some pressure on that way?
Yeah, that would be pretty good. The double reversal energy Gardevoir, kind of a rare play. It's hard to find both your reversal energies at the exact right time, but he actually does have it in the hand currently. So that is an option he could go for. Would be pretty solid because Mitchell would be put in a similar situation where there's this clean Gardevoir in the active spot that's really annoying to try to deal with in KO. And if you're targeting down the Giratina that has the energies on it, that would be the normal, you know, easy way to respond to that.
Does find Counter Catcher off of that Shining Arcana. Will still use a few more abilities. See more Psychic Energy come to the hand. And this is where Allan has to make some tough decisions. Do you just leave some Curlias in play at this point? There is still one more that can be evolved, so we can see one more refinement ability, and this is the turn where you want to use Iono, you want to disrupt your opponent's hand on top of everything else we've been talking about.
Generally so, that is pretty good. And it is also always a question of when do you use your final refinements, before or after the Iono. But actually, I'm not even sure if Allan has an Iono in the hand currently. That's probably what he was looking for. Did not find it and actually has to go for the Avery.
And a little bit of an awkward choice here for Mitchell. Radiant Greninja is a good card early on, but maybe losing a little bit of its value later in the game, but still just wants to have concealed cards as an option. Allan will get 3 additional cards from that Avery supporter. And here we go. How will things play out for Allan? Can respond and even things back up. We also see level ball. And Chip, I think this is an excellent time now for Jirachi to finally come into play.
Yep, we have been talking about it, and now it becomes the time for Jirachi to be played out. Mitchell did prize the 1 single copy of Sableye. Of course, Allan doesn't know that, so he's playing around every possible option that, you know, Mitchell could have available. So definitely feels like the correct time to put Jirachi into play.
Yeah, and leaving Path to the Peak in play for now is actually not terrible. And that was sort of a situation for Mitchell where sometimes you've got to really understand about what the Gardevoir player is doing, because you could have just kept that Path bump maybe for later on in the game. It's okay to stay in play right now. Your opponent's really not enticed to discard it right now, because obviously, besides Radiant Greninja, there's no rule box abilities being used. So the more I think about it, it's probably okay. It's not a huge make or break.
Yeah, it really, you know, it feels like a lot of this matchup is just both players trying to limit the other player's options as much as possible, and putting Path to the Peak in play is what Mitchell's trying to do with that.
Just going to see Super Odd bring back Gardevoir EX and Zacian. Usually, this is key at getting back your Kirlias, your Gardevoir lines. Just going to see a few pieces come back. Now, Zacian is a great finisher. We saw it earlier on. That would be the full circle here for Zacian, getting there early and close things out. We'll see if Allan can find the pieces to do that. But for now, we're at minimum seeing Brainwave online deal some damage to this Giratina V-Star. Now, as it stands, it cannot attack next turn with the amount of energy it has onto it. But of course, Mitchel can still use things like that. Flower selecting ability, if there are switching cards, Course's Experiment. We still know there's a few left in the deck, I believe 1 or 2.
Yeah, Allan really taking a moment here to take stock of Mitchel's available resources. This is something you see a lot from players really at all stages of a Pokemon TCG metagame, but especially here at the end of a format because lists are very well known. You know, when you sit down and see what your opponent's active Pokemon is, you can probably predict what they're playing within 3 or 4 cards.
And a great play here. Big fan of this from Allan. Double reversal energy, 240 damage for just 2 single energy attachments, knocking out Giratina V. We talked about how Giratina loves to play from behind. Allan and this Gardevoir deck have such great tools to play behind as well. And this is why this dynamic is so interesting. Both players trying to play from behind in this match while also getting closer and closer to victory.
With that KO, Allan does go to just 2 prize cards remaining, which means Roxanne is available and online. And sure enough, Mitchel goes for that powerful supporter. You know, back before we had Iono, this was really the only option as a comeback card in the format. And even with Iono being a prevalent card, you know, we see Allan over on the other end is playing 4 copies of it. Roxanne still finds a place in the metagame, especially in this Lost Zone Giratina deck.
Especially later on. Iono, usually at this point, it would only draw both players 2 cards.
Right.
But instead, Mitchel gets to get 6 fresh cards, maybe put together a little bit more dig this turn, maybe set up something like Sableye coming up if that card wasn't prized. Now, that is not an option, but the whole point is you get more resources. You can see something like Boss's Orders be in the hand. Let's take a look and see not only what Mitchel has, but what Allan also can put together after being disrupted this turn.
This game is really coming down to the wire here, Ethan. If Allan does not find the response KO to just win the game on this Giratina V-Star, I think Mitchel is in a great spot to close it out on the next turn. I think we'll probably see Mitchel just go for that knockout here on the active. It is going to cause him to Lost Zone a couple of energy cards, but he'll just need to piece together one more option to finish up the game, and so he's leaving plenty of plays open, putting a couple energy cards back. We could even see Mirage Gate early, potentially. Doesn't look like he has one in hand, but that Cramorant plus Boss's Orders could be an easy way to close out the game as well.
Your hand right now very weak, just a Battle Pass and the 3 remaining copies of those Path to the Peak. Putting Cramorant into play, always a solid option. It means that if your opponent puts up a 1 prize Pokemon, you got a pretty good option of knocking that out, and the energies in play are also pretty solid. There's a high chance Allan can bump this Path to the Peak, and that would re-put this Radiant Greninja's Concealed Cards ability online. There are already a lot of energy cards in the Lost Zone for Mitchel. Did put some back in the deck, but we will just see the Lost Impact knock out this Gardevoir. More than enough damage. And here we go. What can Allan put together here? If he can find some way to knock out this Pokemon.
He drew Research off the Roxanne. You've talked about the Research, you know, how you're maybe not always the biggest fan of it because you usually are building up such a big hand. But in this exact instance, it's probably the perfect card for Allan to draw. All he needs to do is draw as many cards from his deck as possible, and he can set up for the game-winning play. He gets the Zacian V. Now all he's going to need is a counter Stadium and a Gardevoir EX. That's only 2 pieces, and he's going to draw 7 from the Professor's Research and also still has a pair of Refinement to go for as well.
We'll also need 8 Psychic Energy. I'm not sure Allan has built up that many yet in the discard pile.
That is a good point. He did utilize the double reversal energy last turn, so we haven't seen a ton of Psychic Energies come out from Allan just yet.
But as you said, Research is pretty much in this deck for situations like this. You get Iono low, and then you've got that ability. So Allan actually looks like using a Judge Shuffle here to maybe get things going, give him a little bit of luck outside of the book. And there it is. Professor's Research, 7 cards. Refinement still online. We did see that Gardevoir EX get shuffled back into the deck.
I see the Gardevoir EX. I see the Psychic Energy. I don't know if I see a Stadium card just yet. However, there are a few searching cards. There's the Level Ball. There's an Ultra Ball. So Allan can do quite a bit of thinning here. Try to maximize his chances. How many Stadium bumps are in the deck? I see Collapsed. a couple of Artisan as well.
I think we got 3 stadium options. I don't think we've seen any stadiums get played, and
That's
there's
right.
just the one Moonlit Hill. And this is great sequencing from Allan. Take everything out of the deck that is not Psychic Energies and counter stadiums, and can now draw 6 cards here, potentially even 8 if a stadium bump is found, turning on concealed cards.
Yeah, this is setting up pretty decently for Allan here. He's got a pretty high odds win, I think, this turn. But anything can happen in the Pokemon TCG. It all comes down to this. If Allan doesn't find this KO, what's up?
I said checking the discard pile here. Yeah. Couldn't quite see how many energies were there. So, I mean, this is, I think, the piece that I'm not sure of, because 8 is a lot of energy. I mean, that's all but 2 Psychic Energy.
Yeah, it looks like there is 6 or so in the discard pile. We're going to see the refinement. There is 1 in the hand, which can always be discarded. There's the stadium bump. So let's see if Allan has all of the pieces. Are the energies in the discard pile to just win the game? Concealed cards. Finds 2 more, gets 1 more energy in the discard pile as well. Does he need to find another Psychic Energy still? That might be the case here, Ethan.
We also may need to find Gardevoir EX.
No, he's got the Gardevoir. He's got the Gardevoir. Just needs the Psychic Energy. I don't see it.
Is this going to come down to this?
It might come down to the Shining Arcana. 2 more cards. No Psychic Energy. Does he only have 7 Psychics in the discard pile?
I think he might be just short. Let's check it out. How many Psychic Energies are in here? I feel like you slam it down if you have it.
I think he missed. I think he doesn't quite have it.
Wow, this is a big-time miss here for Allan. So short, and it's just going to pass the turn over.
What an opening here for Mitchell. Has the Mirage Gate in the hand. Does he find a Boss's Orders on the top? Are you kidding me?
What a huge time find. Boss's Orders can allow this Giratina V-Star to get powered up, and Boss's Orders can target any Pokemon on the bench.
Wow.
Allan, so close, but just missing the 1 energy card. Had such great outs to find it, and missed it. Heartbreaking to miss it, but he still had a chance, and Mitchell had the perfect response back in Boss's Orders and a way to repower up Giratina V-Star. Wow, Chip, what a game.
What a finish. So close, so down to the wire, and honestly, you can almost point back to what happened in the early turns. Allan had to start that Zacian V, gave Mitchell 2 prize cards pretty early on in the game. Normally not what you want to do with Gardevoir, and that made Mitchell's prize map so much easier.
Zacian put on aggression early, was responded to by this Cramorant, but it was just those final turns. The Roxanne was a lie, Chip. It found the professor's research, but it was really just...
And then it was the research ended up being a lie, right, in response, huh?
Yeah, I do think back there were a few times where I think Allan maybe had another Psychic Energy and decided to discard Battle VIP Pass because, of course, Battle Pass has no positive effect. It just kind of sits in your hand, and it was just 1 energy short. I'm sure if we maybe look back on that game, there was maybe 1 more opportunity to potentially discard a Psychic Energy.
I mean, remember there was the turn where he Shining Arcana'd and drew the Psychic Energy, right? I mean, if that energy goes into play, that means it eventually goes to the discard pile.
Yeah.
That could have possibly been the difference. And look at this, Sableye being prized once again for Mitchell. A path to the peak, nothing like too terrible for Mitchell's side. You want to have access to the Sableye, at least make it a threat. But on Allan's end, 3 energy cards, one of them being that special reversal energy and also Radiant Greninja in the prize cards.
Well, if that game 1 was any indication for how this series is going to be, I am excited for what will be provided. There is a Mew start, and now Mew is a great starter in a lot of matchups, but it can be a little bit of a liability here against Lost Zone decks.
Yeah, it's definitely true. It becomes a little bit of a clogged up space on your bench, but its Mysterious Tail is extremely powerful, and a lot of times what you need to get going, so not the worst starter, and also it becomes a perfect thing to be KO'd by an early Cramorant, so I'm sure Allan is crossing his fingers that Mitchell is going to take that early knockout.
So just checking through the deck, we'll note that Radiant Greninja is in the prize cards. And we'll be going first again in this position. So we will just see the Battle Pass be used first. Is there something else like a way to search Pokemon out? And there isn't. It looks like maybe an Ultra Ball, but that's a very costly card to get something like Ralts down. We'll be relying off this Mew. I mean, if this Mew doesn't find anything, something like a turn 1 Spit Innocently will put a lot of pressure onto Allan to set up quick or get run over.
Allan does at least have a pretty solid hand outside of not having a way to find another Pokemon. He has a Mirage Step Curlia and a Psychic Energy, so we can still see the turn 2 Mirage Step at minimum.
And yeah, really not finding anything. It's just a Super Rod off of that Mysterious Tail. Going to go all in onto this Ralts, looking for potentially a Mirage Step the following turn. Now, at worst, there is nothing Mitchell can really do to knock out this Ralts on turn 1.
Right.
But it is always risky when you have no other Ralts in play and top decking, because if you find one of those Curlias, you can't Mirage Step it into play.
Yeah, you know that this Ralts is relatively safe for sure. I mean, there's a world, I guess, where Mitchell goes for Comfey and Boss's orders Creamerant KO, but that would be such an overextension of resources.
If that's what it takes at that point, I'm here for it.
I mean, I would be down
it.
for it if it literally won Mitchell the game on the spot.
Sure.
But, then that gives Allan a turn to just bench a few more Ralts, and then Mitchell would be like, oh, man, I can't put a Giratina in play. That doesn't seem very good.
Sometimes you got to believe, Jim. I don't know if I'm believing in that.
Yeah, not that strategy.
Speaking of believing, there is nothing in this hand. Just gonna concealed cards and pass the turn. What is happening?
Oh my goodness. This is the opening Allan needs, honestly, to get back in this game. I mean, that first game took well over 25 minutes, more than half the time in the round. So Allan really, if he wants to come away the victor in this Swiss round 14, he is going to have to put on the pressure and get a quick win in this game.
Yeah, and this is excellent here. Has the energy to retreat the Mew, and the Mirage Step is already in the hand. Doesn't have to burn any Ultra Ball, so we'll have guaranteed Surge next turn for Gardevoir EX, Shining Arcana. And, I mean,
he's got the guaranteed win next turn if Mitchell does not bench another Pokemon
if
here.
If Mitchell does not draw into anything either off the top of the deck or from this concealed cards, the game is just right there for Allan. Just needs to have one more Psychic Energy.
Turn.
It is a Nest Ball, though, and that will keep Mitchell in the game. And you see, with no basic Pokemon in hand, we'll use the concealed cards before, but I'm not sure that really drew into anything. And now, a very tough choice for Mitchell. Do you just grab a Comfey and try and Flower Selecting and hope those 2 cards bail you out? Or do you maybe grab something like Giratina and maybe go for Abyss Seeking? What do you think, Chip?
It's definitely a tough call. With a couple of Jet Energy in hand, either of them are fine options. You can get the Flower Selecting off and then hope to chain that into finding another Comfey or another Giratina and then still pull one of those pieces off. I think the Giratina is not too bad. It's pretty unlikely Allan finds a knockout on it this turn. He hasn't played a supporter quite yet this game. But really, you can't underestimate Gardevoir, especially with a full board of Refinement Curlias. So if Mitchell goes for the Giratina, uses Abyss Seeking, and Allan just responds and KOs it, this game is going to steamroll pretty quickly.
You've got to be careful as the Gardevoir player to not get too aggressive, though.
True,
we saw how important Allan was even being behind in that game. But even if you just evolve into Gardevoir EX and hit this Giratina for 190 damage and the 4 cards aren't much, then you're not committing resources, you're not damaging your board, and you're leaving damage on a Pokemon that you can knock out later in the game with Cresselia or Screamtail. Or just Screamtail.
But with your opponent's start being what it is here, like, they've only got 2 cards in the Lost Zone, right? If you knock out this Giratina, you're going to have multiple turns of them really not doing too much for you to try to just mount an onslaught of an attack. And that, honestly, considering the time as well, that's a big part of this, Ethan.
True.
Gardevoir normally is that methodical, come from behind deck. Allan's kind of got to put the pedal to the metal here. He's got to try to get these knockouts and put on the pressure so that he can become the victor in Game 2, and then there's enough time for Game 3 to have a conclusion.
You see, not even playing that Iono in hand, just straight full throttle, just drawing the 3 cards off Avery. This is like Tierno here, Chip, just gonna draw a few cards and say, you know what, that's good enough for me for the turn. There are a few Psychic Energy in the discard pile, and this is where Allan has to understand this balance between overextending and also doing it in a way where you're trying to limit how much your Pokemon are damaged, but it looks like it's just going to be Ultra Balling into this Gardevoir EX, playing a Fog Crystal, grabbing a Psychic Energy, and it is just going to be going in, using Miracle Force for 190. And I think besides the clock, Chip, I like this play.
Yeah.
Don't get overzealous.
But the clock is part of things here, right?
I mean, that's the thing to think about. But
that's the thing about these tournaments. You got to think outside of just playing one singular game of Pokemon. You're playing a best of 3. There's a 50-minute time limit. You have to make adjustments on the fly sometimes.
It is tough.
Because this play, I mean, Allan is still multiple turns away from winning, and while he is in a great position, and he will probably win this game, it's going to just take, and he's made it now effectively take 1 extra turn, maybe 2 extra turns as well. So now we're going to get to a situation where Allan's going to win this game. There's going to be 2 or 3 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah.
And we're going to tie.
Now we're in a position here where both players are actually okay with a tie in this situation. Now, of course, they both want to win, but being at 10-2-2, you do put yourself in a spot where a win in your final round would put you in a position to lock up a spot, most likely in top cut. So action will continue. We are at 16 minutes left on the clock, as Mitchell will have the chance to play a first supporter card of this set and does find that Colress's Experiment.
Yep.
So after a slow start, finally getting things re-kicked off.
We definitely should not be counting Mitchell out.
No.
You know, I mean, Allan is in a favorable spot. If there was any, odds on this game or anything like that, you would definitely heavily be favoring Allan from this position. But if there is a comeback deck, something that can find a way in this game, we know for certain it is the Giratina V-Star.
We'll see the Colress get played. Lots of great options. That Nest Ball, really important to get down another Giratina. You see, even considering valuing evolving this Giratina V into a V-Star. Now, that is an okay option. I don't necessarily know if you need it this turn. You kind of want potentially options to just draw more cards and see through the deck. You see Mitchell really in the tank about what to select here off of this Colress's Experiment.
Yeah, trying to figure out exactly what the correct line is. Losing a path and losing an energy, not the best, but valued the other cards a little bit more in this instance.
So now the question here for Mitchell is, what attack do you use this turn? Do you poke this? That feels so bad, hitting into this Gardevoir EX with something like Cramorant. Just really going to get knocked out by, this is a Pokemon that is almost always during the game. If it's going to get knocked out, it's going to be from something like the Star Requiem. You're going to save it for a position like that. And you see Mitchell just prioritizing getting more Giratina V into play to threaten more damage and more options of play on the following turn.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Could hit with the Cramorant like we mentioned, but even just a pass this turn is, I think, going to be where we end up. It's not the end of the world, and, force Allan to do something here.
Yeah, no reason to use Abyss Seeking. It's just not worth the value of putting up a 2-prize Pokemon.
Yeah, force Allan to find the boss's orders, or let that be something that later on Allan has to try to.
It's just going to take a knockout. Not even going to use any refinement abilities.
I like this.
Yeah.
This is Allan recognizing the clock, right? Yeah. And playing to what he needs to do. Optimally would be to just discard cards with refinement, thin out the bad cards, play a supporter, do whatever. He knows his hand cannot get disrupted, right? Mitchell only plays 2 Roxanne. That's very common in these Giratina lists, and he knows that the clock is absolutely his worst enemy at this spot. So just take a knockout and deal with the rest later. Comfey to the bench, bring the other one to the active, and then once again bring that other Comfey back to the bench so the Giratina can move in to the active spot and use that Star Requiem. Let's see if he has those pieces.
This is what makes Pokemon so exciting. Nobody's out of it yet. This is what dreams are made of for Mitchell. Can he put himself into this position here? Now, there is that Giratina V-Star, so you can evolve that Giratina V, give yourself a little bit more HP. But with how things are working here, I think the pieces are guaranteed. Mitchell has not played an energy card yet for turn, and with that switch card, can get this attack off. Or considering putting it, there are 2 switching cards in hand, even better, can start to power up the second Giratina V-Star.
Yep, has the switch, has the switch cart as well, just double counting the Lost Zone, 9 currently. This Comfey puts you up to 10. Not the best hit, a pair of energy cards. Yeah. Definitely a little annoying, but it is what it is, and it is going to be a fine recovery here because it is going to yield you 2 prize cards jumping ahead in this prize trade.
Yeah, and again, I understand the clock, but not drawing more cards when this whole matchup comes down to Roxanne, putting you into bad cards. It's such a small trade-off for just taking 20 seconds going, refine, draw 2, refine, draw 2, refine, draw 2.
I probably would have liked to have seen Allan refine and just do it quickly, right? That would have probably been good, but as it stands, here we are.
Star Requiem taking the knockout onto this Gardevoir EX. Mitchell back in the lead, but there's still a very heavily damaged Giratina V-Star on the bench. And honestly, from Allan here, I would like to see him play around Roxanne. How do you think he can do that, Chip, when it comes to not getting hand disrupted potentially this turn?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to utilize some other alternate attacker in the Scream Tail or find a counter catcher, right? And counter catcher bringing up one of these single prize Pokemon, probably one of the Comfey, seems pretty strong. Bring up a Comfey, get rid of it, and then you don't get Roxanne, and then you have a pretty clear prize trade as well to just knock out one Giratina, knock out the other Giratina, to take your final 4 prizes.
Allan's playing this deck for a while. all throughout this season, all throughout this format. If anybody's going to find a route to win this game, it is him. Starting the refined train off, battle VIP pass, hitting the discard pile.
Finds another battle VIP pass, which I expect to be discarded once again here.
And has already used that mysterious tail, and there is the second Gardevoir EX. So
not too bad.
One of these refinement Gardevoirs are going to get evolved into this. You usually really don't want to lock your refinements out of play, but at this spot it's okay. And there is the counter stadium and the Jirachi. So there is a few options of play here. This really signals either counter catcher or reversal energy. One of those copies is in the prize cards chip, so we'll have to just find that single copy if Allan wants to go after this active Giratina V-Star.
Yeah, and let's also remember a couple of basic psychic energies in the prize cards as well, which always could throw a little bit of a wrench in things.
Really smart sequencing, not shuffling the deck, just using Shining Arcana, but not getting rewarded for it. They're two pretty mediocre cards, and yet again, big two cards here.
There it is.
Find the counter catcher, though. It's probably not as good as reversal energy knocking out this Giratina, but you'll take it.
Yeah, it's what you got to do here in this spot. And now the question as well is what to attack with. If you could use the Moonlit Hill or attach an energy from hand, maybe attacking with Gardevoir EX would be pretty nice. But the fact here in this position, Allan would have to put so many damage counters on it. It would be an easy response from a Lost Impact. He doesn't quite have that play.
Yeah.
So he probably just has to go with a Gardevoir normal attack.
Yeah, and usually you want to leave a Kirlia open in this spot because your Gardevoir EX can always get knocked out. But with Star Requiem being used so early, it's okay to just draw some more cards. Those two cards, though, really not that helpful. Another counter stadium and that Professor Turo's scenario, or not that Turo, looks like just a boss's orders. And there it is, counter catcher, and we'll do this play I mentioned. Go after this Radiant Greninja, take a knockout, and then try and set up a 2-turn win condition, or rather, 2 knockout win condition. Knock out this damaged Giratina V-Star, and knock out this Giratina V-Star on the bench. What does Mitchell have in this hand? And this looks like a really solid 4-card hand. 5 cards now, has Colress, Mirage Gate, pivoting options. Mitchell still in a position to respond.
I think there are quite a few energy cards in the discard pile, quite a few in the Lost Zone. Actually, just 1 or 2 in the discard pile, it looks like.
You did play that Super Raw the previous turn to put that Comfey and a few energies back in play. Starting off the Flower Selecting is a very easy choice. How will Mitchell sequence this through? There is that Cramorant in the hand. Is that the attacker you maybe want to use on this turn?
Yeah, Cramorant seems perfect here. We saw earlier, you know, Allan had his Gardevoir's attack And it's nice that the Screamtail is already in play for Allan, so even if Mitchell uses something like the Roxanne this turn, it's going to have to be Roxanne plus Path, and cross your fingers that Allan does not have the counter stadium. Now, it's a pretty decent shot, honestly, because Allan has no Curly on the bench, no Gardevoir with Shining Arcana on the bench. So if Mitchell can give Allan just 2 cards from a Roxanne and put a Path to the Peak in play, we'll just have to see what Allan draws into.
Now there are 2 more stadium outs, and those are going to be the big cards for Allan coming up on this turn. Now this is a question here I had Mitchell for maybe to just hold that Path to Peak, don't play it the previous turn, and then play it in combination with the Roxanne when your opponent has a lot of options.
I don't really hate it here. I mean, one of the reasons you play 4 Path to the Peak is because you do want to be a little aggressive with them, and it forces your opponent to utilize their stadiums early. So now, you know, if Mitchell holds off Paths this turn and then Roxanne's, that's one more counter stadium that's still remaining in Allan's deck. Mitchell here still has a really solid chance to find another copy of Path to the Peak.
I mean, that's what it's going to come down to here,
It is. It definitely is.
It's the trade-off.
Seeing 6 cards here, he's got a Comfey in the active. He's got another one on the bench, you know, an energy already to retreat.
And finds that Path, and that's exactly what he's looking for. Also has the counter catcher in hand. I feel like you obviously want to just deal with this Gardevoir, but it's just options to have potentially for later on.
Yeah, you definitely want to just deal with this Gardevoir for a few reasons. One, it's got a bunch of energy on it. It can be a really good attacker for Allan. And 2, it's Allan's only way to draw cards at the moment. So take that Shining Arcana ability out of play. Take all those energy cards out of play. And let's see it. Does Allan have a stadium card? That's all he needs. If he does, he will win the game this turn.
And there's not just Ultra Ball and a few energy cards in this hand.
Yeah, that is not great. The Gardevoir can withstand a hit, and we will see Allan attach an energy for turn to it so that it can become a pivot and retreat next turn. But what does Mitchell have? No way to win the game on the spot.
Does have Boss's Orders, so this is a question here. Maybe you play the Boss's Orders and target this Screamtail down. What do you think about that, Chip?
Yeah, that's got to be the best play to go for here. Now you would then in turn force Allan to find 2 cards next turn. He would need Boss's Orders and a counter stadium in order to bring up and KO Mitchell's Giratina V-Star on the bench with his active Gardevoir.
And it's just going to be a spit innocently. Here we go. What is a top deck for turn? Is it a counter stadium? It's just a Ralts is going to have to attach this active and maybe retreat into this Mew on the bench. Use this Mysterious Tail. What can we possibly find off of this? There's a Super Rod, but I don't think there's anything else you can do. You can put more of these Curlias into play, but we saw Mitchell hold on to this Boss's Orders. This is going down to the wire, and it's just going to be a pass back. And the Super Rod top deck, if there's enough energy cards in the discard pile, a Psychic and a Grass Energy can be found, and I think Mitchell has found all of the pieces here to close this game out. The Super Rod, putting the energies back in, and the Mirage Gate as well. This is exactly how you draw it up.
There you
Boss
go.
and Mirage Gate, and Mitchell closes out 2-0, going to 34 match points and putting himself in an excellent spot to enter into this top 8 cut. Wow, Chip, wow.
What a game that was, Ethan. That game 1 really down to the wire. Allan had a solid chance to win, but his deck just did not cooperate, did not find enough Psychic energies. You know, maybe there was an opportunity to get one in the discard pile earlier on, but as it stands, Mitchell found the Boss's Orders off the top of the deck, and it was Boss's Orders in back-to-back games closing things out to put Mitchell in an excellent position to make top 8 of this tournament.
That was an incredible set, but that game 1 was crazy. That Boss's Orders top deck is the best moment we've seen on stream, hands down, this entire weekend.
Without a doubt. And it did. You have to think back to this game 1 where Allan was maybe a little unfortunate to have to start the Zacian V, one of the more annoying starters in the deck. It is nice because you can be aggressive, something Gardevoir normally is not, but Mitchell did have the turn 1 Cramorant attack and was able to find the Super Rod to bring that Cramorant back and immediately take 2 prizes.
And this is why people say this matchup is so close, because it feels like either player can win the game. The tempo swings back and forth between these players. And these 2 Boss's Orders in game 1, they were the make or break, right? Bringing that Gardevoir up, taking the 2 prize cards. This play, and also an excellent line for Allan, using double reversal energy, 240 damage back into this Giratina V. But it was that final turn where we saw the Boss's Orders be found after investing into this big, costly knockout into the Shining Arcana that was able to allow Mitchell to close out game number 1. What a top deck.
And let's remember as well, right, starts with Radiant Greninja, uses concealed cards, and passes. Has absolutely nothing going for him. Top decks a Nest Ball on the next turn, is able to get a little something going. Allan had an excellent setup, didn't play supporters early, but got the turn to Mirage Step to fill the board with Curly, as we saw Gardevoir pieces available all throughout the game. Excellent counter catcher plays, you know, tons of different options. Allan wisely this turn playing around Roxanne as well, but it was all for naught, as Mitchell eventually was able to find the combination of Path to the Peak and Roxanne, and Mitchell just was able to lock Allan out of finding any of those stadium cards that led to his eventual victory.
Roxanne was a lie game 1, and then Roxanne wasn't a lie game 2. So, you know what, 50-50 evened out. I'd say that's pretty good.
Hey, let's remember though, Roxanne, you know, it did give Allan the research, but Allan still didn't find the win, right? So maybe Roxanne was a little bit of a lie, but it just gave Allan a little bit of false hope almost. There was a chance to win that game. Didn't quite happen. And yeah, Mitchell with a 2-0 victory. Congratulations.
It's a shame this format's coming back to an end, because I think for anybody watching that is a great VOD to review on the pros and cons of playing this matchup out, maybe some small moments where things could have gone differently. Masterclass in the matchup there, but it is going to be Mitchell advancing to 11-2-1, inching his way closer and closer to top cut. It was kind of heartbreaking for me to watch that match. I had Giratina and Gardevoir EX on my 2 cards to succeed
For
this
your
weekend.
Yep.
So you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going to take the optimistic approach. I was winning regardless. So.
Well, definitely the person winning regardless was Mitchell Silva here. Yeah, 34 match points, 11-2-1, like you said. We'll hopefully be able to ID in the last round. 35 match points most likely will be safe at this event in order to lock up a spot into top 8. And while we're waiting to get our player ready for an interview, we can look at some of the results out in the field. It looks like Colin Matthews did take the loss to Lucas Zing. Now, I did notice that that result was submitted pretty early, so I almost wonder if Colin conceded to Lucas, wanting Lucas Zing cuts.
This? Oh, this is next round. So yeah, it looks like
already up around number 15. It looks like
Lucas Zing is at 11-2-1. So if Charlie, and it looks like Charlie Lockyer actually played his matchup out, was in a position to potentially double ID, but won the round before.
Yeah, I mean, his opponent probably couldn't ID is what the situation was. Got down paired, his opponent had to play, so he has to play, and yeah, he gets to a 12-2 record. Colin Matthews at 12-1-1. They are both absolutely locked up, and this round it does look like Colin Matthews and Mitchell Silva got paired up. Of course, Mitchell just got the win. So I have to imagine that will probably be an ID there, most likely. I don't know that Colin wants to play it out and try to like beat Mitchell out of cuts. That's a matchup that, you know, as Mew VMAX, you kind of are okay having in top cut. Even though Mitchell has the Spiritomb, it's really not terrible, right? It's not too bad of a matchup by any means for the Mew VMAX. And then, yeah, Charlie Lockyer and Lucas Zing will most likely ID, and then a ton of win and ends happening as well.
Yeah, lots to talk about for the next round, but for now, we have an interview ready with Mitchell Silva. Let's throw it down to the lounge and hear